Welcome to Flex with Purpose, the podcast that explores what it means to move toward our highest potential, not for personal gain or applause, but to strengthen others and make the world a better place. I'm your host, Schalee Sanchez, and I am so grateful that you're with us. This is a conversation with people who are living boldly, leading authentically, and allowing humility to guide their impact. And tonight, I am extremely grateful that we have Aaron Steensma.
Yep.
Steensma. I keep wanting to say Steensman. Okay, I don't know why I want to add an N to it. But Aaron, thank you so much for saying yes to being a part of this conversation, because just in the little time that we got to warm up together, I can already tell that there is some very intentional purpose that God has in us sitting at this table together tonight and allowing other people to listen in to your story, but also hearing from God about what he has to offer people. And so I'm really, really excited about this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing more of what you have to share. And also, it is a really great thing to be able to let our stories reflect a God who is greater than we are.
Absolutely.
And as we've already been talking about a little bit, how so often the brokenness in our stories is what ends up reflecting even more of his grace and power.
Yeah.
So as we share, and just allow this conversation to unfold. It is completely going to be open, and you have the freedom to talk about the things from your personal life, from your professional life. And I'm going to start just with a question of what are some, maybe two of the significant moments in your life that led you to where you're at right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say one of the most impactful things was my move to Texas and following God's call from New York down to here, moving, literally across the country with a dream, a prayer, and a Honda Accord loaded with one laundry basket of clothing.
Well, what color was the Honda Accord?
Red.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a coupe.
Of course it was.
Yeah, but it was, I would say that was probably one of the largest impacts, and just following God's call through every step of my life. As a young child growing up in upstate New York, we grew up on a farm, and, it was a lot different than life is today.
Yeah. How old were you when you moved from New York to Texas?
Yeah, I was 23 going on 24.
Okay.
So I got hired in the beginning of 2013 by Allen Police Department, and I accepted the phone call from the chief. Come on down, start July 8th. And so I drove down, and like I say, in a dream and a prayer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of things changed in that moment of your life,
Yeah.
2022, 23.
Yep.
And that was one significant moment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of, doesn't have to be the most significant moment, but another significant moment in your life that really stands out to you as you think about what brought you to this moment?
What brought me to here? Yeah, I mean, my wife, Ellen, meeting Ellen, I could tell you exactly where we were when I met.
Okay, tell us
met.
The story.
I was here. It was my third Sunday after moving down. So the way I found the church that we are attending, I was working at a nuclear power plant in security, and I was running a little late to work that day, and I was listening to Pastor Chuck Swindoll on the radio, and at the end, I'd already known that I was accepting the job and moving to Texas, but I didn't have a church. And at the end of his radio show, they talked about his ministry in Plano. And so I was like, okay, I know where that is. I'm going to be right down the road. And then my third Sunday, I ended up attending church, wanted to get involved in young adult ministry, in not ministry, but just being in a class, because age of the church that I went to was back in New York was probably about 75 on average.
Okay.
So I thought it'd be good to get around people my own age. And I walked in, and my third Sunday, Ellen sat right behind me. And I didn't know what to say to her. So I turned around and said, "I like your purse."
Okay.
I ran out of material and turned around and sat back and, faced forward until I could think of the next thing.
Okay.
So, and we started our friendship there. We were friends for 6 months, started dating, December of 2013. And, got married in November of 2015.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was, I would say, very huge part of my story. And yeah, just great memories. Great memories.
Well, good. I'm glad that you complimented Ellen on her purse and initiated the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Even though you didn't know where it was going to go from there.
Yep.
But I think that that's what happens a lot of times in life is that we take the first step, not necessarily knowing what the next step is going to be or what's going to happen as a result of us taking the step.
Mm-hmm.
And at times that can be very scary.
Yeah.
At times that can also have some emotion of just excitement, and I'm very adventurous, so sometimes those kind of moments are just there's adrenaline pumping and I'm thinking this is going to be something good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that walking by faith
Right.
aspect. And you were asking about moments in my life and just kind of snapshots, and I would say that's one of the things that I look at and go, walking by faith, and what does that mean in my life, and all the different times that I've stepped out not seeing the next turn or the next step, and you just trust the Lord. And it's been a really cool journey. And I'm only 36 and, excited to see what he's going to do,
Right.
in my life. So
you
it's
still
pretty
have
fun.
a whole lot left.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 46, so
Okay.
I'm
Yep.
a little ahead of you, and I can definitely say it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ellen and I have been married since 2015, November 15th, 2015. So we just hit 10-year anniversary married.
Mm-hmm.
We have 7-year-old Grace and Marcus, 3 going on 4.
Okay.
So we love it down here and love being a dad, love being a husband,
Mm-hmm.
chasing kids and just being present for all the little moments has probably been one of the greatest things in my life, just not missing anything with the kids. Just watching Mark reach up, hold me, last week we were out of town and I was just watching the 2 kids run down the beach and I was thinking, that's how God sees us, Dad, get that seashell for me. Can you help me with this? Hold me. I don't want to walk. It's just, it's neat. It's a neat comparison to be a parent and see faith through those eyes.
Right. And the joy that you experience and your children wanting to be with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Wanting you to be there with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. So, yeah, but we, let's see. So 2015, we got married. We've been in the area. We have no intent of leaving. So,
not headed back to New York.
No, goodness, no.
Do your parents still live up in New York?
They do. My folks are retired. My dad farms full time. I say retired. He farms full time, and talk about a hard worker, and a person that you want to match and be like. I'm 36 now, and my dad, I'm gonna brag on him for a minute, but my dad worked 27 years of night shift so that he could put my sister and I through private school, driving truck overnight, delivering gas to gas stations, and then farmed during the day. Cash crop, we were raising trees. And now that I'm 36, looking back how my dad loaded a tractor trailer of 10-foot trees by hand, throwing 150-pound Christmas trees 8 feet into the air over his head. I don't know how he did it. But obviously a good motivation. He was the provider. But just a bear of a human to be able to do that. My dad's 6'4" now. He was 6'6" when I was a kid. So he's always been bigger than me. But to see a father put himself second for his kids, is always inspired me. And my mom has got the sweetest heart. She worked at a Christian counseling office as their secretary for decades and just cares for people. They're both active in the church, and yeah, we had a great childhood. Hard work. I worked on the dairy down the road because I liked the cows.
Okay.
Trees are fun, but cows were a lot better.
Okay. What about the cows? So I'm intrigued because in January of this year, I got to go to Fort Collins with my kids.
Okay.
My younger brother and his wife moved up there last summer, and there's a big dairy farm up there. So we went and had a tour and saw all the cows over there and how they milk them and how they process it and all that. So what did you like about being around the cows?
Yeah, trees were stagnant,
Okay.
but the cows, they would grow and they were animals, and I just liked being around the animals. I started when I was in first grade.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I asked mom and dad if I could work. It was Roger, was the farmer's name, and I said, "Hey, can I go down to Rogers and get a job?" And mom drove me down there, and I got a job for $1 a day,
Wow.
sweeping out the grain, the old grain from the morning feed, when they were milked. And I would say maybe only milked 32 on a full barn. And yeah, I liked being around the animals and I wouldn't say the culture because it was just us, but just being around and, being a part of that was very formative for me. I worked there from when I was first grade all the way till 12th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started just feeding the cows and then worked my way through, running tractors, planting, plowing, all the stuff that you would do as a farmer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cold. We didn't have heat in the barn. So the cows' body heat would keep the barn warm in the wintertime.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is I'm just thinking about what that would feel like, and I don't think it would be pleasant.
No, it was definitely yeah, looking back, I'm glad those are memories,
Yeah, right. Glad
But
you're not doing that anymore.
yeah, but now my dad does soybeans and corn. So it doesn't do he does a little bit of Christmas trees, but not as much anymore. And it's done very well doing soybean production, and he's really into it, which, being an adult now, I love watching my dad be a student in that way and really enjoy retirement in the way that he's doing it. He's not stopping and just sitting in a chair. He's up and out every day.
Right.
So that's cool.
Well, two of the things stood out to me. I mean, when you're describing your dad throwing these Christmas trees, I'm envisioning this and thinking, man, who is this guy?
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I'm really impacted by his sacrifice, his willingness to put his family first and do everything possible to give you the best that he could. And I think that as parents, I know that that's what drives what I do.
Yeah.
I want the very best for my kids. And so I find the way. I mean, even when I'm in moments when I don't see a way, I ask God and just move in the direction that he starts to lead me towards. And it's a beautiful thing now to see your father's decisions have the results that they had.
Yeah.
And know that what we do for our kids is going to have a positive result.
Yeah.
For them. But the other thing that stood out is that now, retired, he continues to learn. He's a lifelong learner.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is such a powerful thing because that's a posture of humility, really, in the sense that we don't ever get to a place where we've done enough. We've learned enough. Now we can just sit back and I think that is really a a intentional decision, because the other option is available.
Right. No, it's so true.
To say, okay, I have worked hard so many years, and now I'm going to take a break. Now I'm going to just sit back and relax. And the fact that he continues to look for ways that his strengths, that his knowledge can be beneficial, and use that in a positive way is really encouraging.
That's cool. Yeah. No,
but he didn't influence you to become a farmer.
That's true. No, that's a fair point. Yeah.
So you didn't follow the exact path that he gave you an example. But you have imitated a lot of his characteristics.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, faith was always first and foremost in our house growing up. We would read the King James Bible and around the dinner table, Dad would work nights. And so we'd either read it early or, when he would go, or we would do it on nights that he was off, and Mom and Dad would put it in front of me and I'd work through. I still have vivid memories of working through Kings 1 and 2. But I mean, that was one of the things that I'm most grateful for to my parents for is raising us in a Christian home that protected us, and giving us the opportunity, that was sacrificial on their part. And I acknowledge that and know how hard that they worked to get us there, and that's the beauty of the American dream to me, is the fact that they have a dream for the next generation as well. I love the American dream, and I left law enforcement and, as you know, have my own company. And the reasoning behind that is I feel that I owe it to previous generations. My grandfather came from Germany. He was in World War II, and he was one of 2 to survive in his village. When he walked home, his sister, my great aunt, said that he was so unrecognizable that she didn't know who he was. He was left for dead, and the Americans, when they were stacking bodies, lifted him and he groaned, and that's how they knew he was alive. They pulled him out of the body pile and gave him water, a little bit of food, and provisions essentially for a few days. And they said, if you survive, we're coming back through in a handful of days, we'll be through and help you. And he was still alive. And so, I feel a sense of owing it to that generation that made it through. He then crossed the Berlin Wall, flew to the United States, and started a life here. It's an incredible story, really. And my parents built on that. It's just my responsibility to continue the building on it.
So what is it now that, with that motivation, what is the legacy you hope to leave? What is it that you how do you want to impact the world? When people look at your story, like you've been telling the story of 2 other men in your life that have, in a way, really influenced you. What do you want that to look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. Where I feel God calling is a lot of where I've been. I know we talked a little bit before about some of my story, and this is probably a pretty appropriate time to jump into that. But I was
let's go.
I was so I started in law enforcement in 2013. I had an absolute blast, by the way, being a cop. 13 to 20, I worked, from the academy through to road patrol, night shift, day shift, training, and the ups and the downs of law enforcement were, I ran the gamut of it. And in 2020, right before I became a detective, I was really struggling in 5 areas of wellness: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and financial. Every one of those areas was getting rocked all at the same time. Mentally, I was struggling with the stuff that I witnessed on, out on the road. We see not only the worst of what happens within a city, but we have to just move on to the next thing. You could go from a tragic crime scene to a barking dog complaint, and the service level has to be the same. There's no closure. You're just expected to pick it up and move on. The analogy is, cops are kind of like cats. They go, they do their thing, but then they just kind of want to be left alone. And that was very true for me. I just wanted to be left alone, do my job, and I struggled on that. So mentally, spiritually, I couldn't understand why God was allowing me to go through that. I left the academy as the most fit of 35 of us, 34, and I gained 50 pounds of unhealthy weight, working night shift and eating fast food. Financially, my wife stopped working because we had Grace, and that was something that I wanted to provide, was the ability for her to be a stay-at-home mom. I worked 700 hours of overtime in 2019, just compounding the issue. And then emotionally, I had no friends outside of law enforcement. And so I really hit a breaking point. I had great people that surrounded me when I reached out for help, and they guided me through all 5 of those pillars of wellness to get back, through getting EMDR, like we talked about, EMDR therapy, and putting to rest the nightmares that haunted me. I lost 50 pounds. I went back down to pre-academy weight through P90X in the parking lot at the police station. We took Dave Ramsey courses and just dead snowballed. And then I worked on faith, deepening my faith and understanding why God allowed me to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and his purpose through it. And that's the key thing, is he had a purpose. And I used to say this to people on the road when you go to calls, and God has a great way of making you eat your words. But I would tell people, there's a reason you're going through what you're going through today. And it's not necessarily for you. It's because God needs you for someone else in the future. I didn't know I was preaching into my own life. And then emotionally, I really focused on friends outside of law enforcement. Once I was better, it was a journey that lasted years. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I didn't wake up and say, here's the 5 pillars of wellness that I need to do better in. But it was just kind of a slow trickle of, let's work on this. Let's work on the next step. And not being ashamed. Pride has a very ugly way of getting you, and keeping you down. And I can attest to that, which is why I struggled so much, feeling that I didn't need to reach out for help.
That's a really, really crucial thing. I think that it's helpful for other people to be able to hear in that moment when pride had you in this, under this, canopy of not wanting to reach out to anybody, not wanting to say what was going on. I am wanting to give you an opportunity to share, what was it that got you to the place where you were then willing to ask for help?
It was a combination of, I couldn't do it anymore. Everything went wrong one day. It was January of 2020. Everything I touched that day went wrong, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I went to a sergeant that I trusted, 38. He retired at 38 years of law enforcement experience. He spoke openly about his struggles with his experiences in law enforcement. And he was the first person I felt that I could trust because I knew he understood what I was going through. And I just went to him and I said, I can't do it. I need help and I don't know what to do. I just know that it can't stay like this. And checked me unavailable, so I couldn't take any calls. And we went up and sat down. So sergeant is below lieutenant. We sat with the lieutenant who was over the wellness resiliency program in Frisco at the time, because I transferred from Allen to Frisco in 2017. Mm-hmm. And they brought me in and just really encapsulated me with care. Mm. Didn't know necessarily every right move to make, but they never left me alone. Mm. That's
powerful.
It really was. And they cared about Ellen. Mm. And that's what touched me the most. Mm-hmm. Is Ellen didn't understand what I was going through. And a lot of first responder spouses don't understand the cycle of it. And there's a very predictable cycle of this that research has shown. Mm-hmm. It's not something that spouses are brought in and taught, but mm-hmm. the point of it is it's all recoverable, mm-hmm. And it's something that our law enforcement first responder community can get through. Right. And the resources are growing, which is excellent. Yep. The departments are bringing to light the help that's out there.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
And now you get to be a part of that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, we do. Worked through the 5 pillars of wellness. And in 2021, 22, again, walking by faith, I really felt God call me to start a nonprofit to help first responders. Didn't know anything about it. And it was just something, it was 22. It was just something that I felt led to do. So we started First Responder Wellness, which is an approved 501c3 through the federal government.
And when you say we, that's you and Ellen, is that
Ellen,
right?
Yep, myself, okay. Ellen, and then a best friend, Tommy Mello, okay, who's elder at Stonebriar Community Church. Okay. Tommy and his wife Stephanie were involved in our premarital counseling, and he was actually the one that baptized me. Right after I left law enforcement, I was baptized as an adult, and Tommy was the one that baptized me. Okay. So yeah, just all through, he's woven through my life story. I met him when I moved down here shortly after, and we started First Responder Wellness together with the mission of lowering the barriers to getting help for first responders. Mm-hmm. Our goal is to not only lower, but to remove the barriers, whatever that is. And we've paid for, I can't even tell you how many hours of counseling. We've had one of our first responders who needed a wheelchair ramp added to his home, and we were able to fund that and get the project to completion. He lost a house due to a mold problem, and we were able to work with other nonprofits to outfit a brand new house or furnishings for a house for a first responder. And just bringing the awareness to the cycle of what happens when you're a cop is important as well. You get in and you're very ambitious, excited. Mm-hmm. You can handle the world, and you can for a while. Mm-hmm. But after some time, everything needs a little bit of maintenance.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which is a lot about what the conversation I got to have with a room of people a few weeks ago at an event that I hosted. Okay. When we discussed ambition and humility and how those are both essential. Yeah. For any of us that are in positions where we lead other people, mm-hmm. and being able to be driven and be ambitious and be confident, and at the same time have that care that you were talking about, and be able to give that compassion. And it is something that in order to get to that place of receiving care from another person, we have to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to say, I need help. Mm-hmm. We have to be willing to ask. And often those are the hard moments in our lives. And I think that there's such a grace that God gives and the kindness that he shows us to connect us with a person that we can trust.
Yeah.
That gives us the ability to take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back, to significant moments in my life when God placed someone there so that I would have the courage to take that next step. And that, if that person hadn't have been there, then it's likely I would have just continued struggling and not knowing what to do.
Yep.
But now that you and I have gone through the things that we've gone through, we get to be that person for someone else and provide that trust, the safety for someone to share and be open with what the struggle is, and then give them that hope of it is possible to take some steps forward.
You're so right. I mean, it's another form of God using our path and our story to impact for his kingdom, right? To the point of what we said a little earlier of, God has you in this moment, not so much for you, but for someone else, and you just won't see the result for maybe a long time, if ever. So it's cool that having the humility and continuously learning, continuously growing, and being open to step out in those times of not knowing and vulnerability, but being the person that, to create the space where someone will want to come to you is huge too. And that's part of our faith walk, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is.
It's cool.
No time to wait in long lines. Neither do most people heading to work. This is the kind of stop that actually fits your morning. Great lattes, energizing matcha, and house-made specialty drinks. Made to fill your day, not slow it down. Visit Maestro Coffee TX on Instagram for more information.
It's very cool.
And really the essence of humility is having the ability to live beyond ourselves and understand that it's not about us. It has there's a much bigger picture that we're a part of.
Yeah.
And so as you think about the other people that have been a part of your life and the ways that you mentioned that one of the key things was now having friends.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
What did that look like for you pursuing friendships?
Wow. That's a great question.
Developing those, cultivating those. Can you share a little bit about what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story about one of my greatest friends. And talk about God's provision and timing. And so 2019, it was July 22nd of 2019. I was working day shift. We got a call in a neighborhood, gated neighborhood in South Frisco. Went through, I'm on my way back out of the neighborhood, and I notice this yard. It was just perfect. And so I was like, I've got to stop. So I pull over, put my police car in park out in front of this house, and I'm standing on the sidewalk looking at this perfectly cut grass that's like a half-inch long, no joke. And a gentleman opens this front door. It's 2 glass doors. He opens it. He's in a sling. And he said, "Officer, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you real mow your yard? What do you do?" And he was like, "If you like this, you got to see the back." And he took me into his home. We walked to the backyard, and it was just this absolutely incredible setup on a golf course. And he just started talking to me like a person, not like a cop who was out. And we had a conversation in his kitchen, handed me a business card, and he said, "Hey, I think you're pretty interesting. Let's go out to lunch." And so I went, okay. I tucked it in my pocket, didn't think anything of it. Went home, and I felt God kind of nudge me of like, hey, you need to reach out to this gentleman. So pull the business card out, send him an email, and I said, I've never done this before, but I really feel God telling me to reach out to you, and I don't know why, other than I just feel his call. And I said, I'll take you up on that lunch. And we went to lunch and just started the friendship there. Okay. And one of the most generous individuals I've ever met, with his time and just who he is. We didn't know each other, but for one lunch. And he asked me, he goes, are you going to travel at all this year? I said, well, my wife and I want to go to Telluride, but we'll probably end up in Denver. And he just kind of smiled with his eyes and didn't say anything. And 5 minutes later, he goes, yeah, I have a ranch in Telluride. If you want to go, you can get with my secretary and they'll set it up. And I thought, what is going on? So I talked to my wife and my best friend about it. And I asked if we could bring our best friend who had, his son was is a little older than Grace. And we took a family trip, the 6 of us at the time. And that was very formative in God's plan for me getting help, because we went to this ranch in the middle of nowhere. And I felt God speak to me there. And my friend is police officer, his wife's in the nursing field. And we talk a little bit about the trauma bond. The people that have experienced traumatic incidents have a bond that I can't explain. But his wife, and I have talked about that, and I shared with her about some of the help that I probably needed. And that was right around the time that I reached out to the sergeant. And so to answer your question about how I developed friendship, it was just something as simple as grass has led to one of the greatest friendships of my life. We still get together all the time. It's been 6 going on 7 years. And that relationship God has used to develop me as a person substantially, and to believe in myself when Ellen was the only one that believed in me, and maybe my folks.
Yeah.
Because your mom and dad will always believe in you. But, Michael saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And just the encouragement to take the steps in faith, to start your own company, to go after the American dream. That's inspiring. I could talk about Michael all day, and so I'll probably stop there. But yeah, how did I develop friendship? It started there, and Michael's helped me meet friends, and then just meeting people outside of law enforcement and being vulnerable. To make friends that maybe don't understand you. Yeah.
So the point is, be open to friendships, even if it comes because of the way someone cuts their grass.
That's right. So true. Yeah. So, yeah. But from that, I transitioned in 2020 into being a detective. I worked property crime. I really enjoyed working burglary. Residential commercial burglary was kind of my area of expertise. I really focused on working with other agencies and developing cross-agency relationships to, as loosely, to use the term loosely, but make task force, multi-jurisdictional task force that we could, to chase the same criminals and develop friendships there, and just met incredible people. We're all chasing the same criminals. So finding a different way to solve crime was something that we really enjoyed doing, and just comparing notes and having meetings like we were in business was a lot of fun. And we chased some really sophisticated criminals through those years. and put a lot of people in prison.
I remember you sharing one of those stories, which was one of the first groups that I met you at, and you were telling one of those stories, and I was just there like, action movies are one of my favorite thing to sit and watch, and I just felt like I was like in on an action movie, like listening to what was happening.
Yeah. So it's like I say, I really enjoyed my time in law enforcement. It was a great career. I just worked my way out of a job. That's why I left. I know that God has a larger purpose for what I'm supposed to do, and being comfortable at my desk was not where He needed me. And when I left, I have a great relationship with the department, and went in for my exit interview, and I told Chief Shilson, I'm not leaving because I'm upset. Nobody knew I was leaving, by the way. My sergeant in the investigations division found out 3 weeks before. I pulled him aside because he was leaving for vacation, and I didn't want to drop a 2-week notice on his desk. So I told him, and I mean, the shock on his face, surprised to me. I didn't, say anything to anybody. I always build in silence. I've always been the person to build in silence. I never told anyone I was going to start a nonprofit. I never told anyone I was going to do a business, but I started at 4 a.m. every day, just building. So 4 to 5 was my Bible time, quiet time with the Lord over coffee. 5 to 6 was my time to build business. And then 6 o'clock, I had to get ready to go to the station. And so I built first responder wellness over the course of 6 months in 1 hour increments. And then I turned around and did that with Fortify Castle the next year. And so at the end of 24, or the middle of 24, I just made the determination that if I'm going to fully trust the Lord and go where I know He wants me to lead, because I've asked Him, can you show me? And never, I'll caution this. Don't ask the Lord to show you something if you're not willing to accept what He shows you. Because I asked the Lord, I said, will you show me what I'm supposed to do with my life? And I really, in an instant, after praying that for years, felt Him say it. And it shocked me so much. It scared me. I wouldn't think about it for 6 months. And I still, like I say, I build in silence. So I don't say anything. I haven't really said anything to anybody, but I could tell you where I'll be in 30 years from now. Because I build towards it every day. And I still get up at 4 a.m. To build, because that's what my job is. I never plan to retire. I plan on working for for doing kingdom work until I'm gone. That's my mission. That's my purpose, is to love God and love others. That's what we say at Stonebriar, and I'm 100% bought in. So, yeah.
And right now, what that looks like is loving your wife and your children first, but also loving your clients in the business that you have.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have gotten to hear you give presentations about your business and talk about that, and it's evident, like, all through the way that you talk about what you do. The reason that you do it is because you care genuinely about the people that you're serving. And it's really encouraging. And I'm gonna share this story because you love on people and care for people in every aspect of your life, whether it's with your family or whether it's through your business, through the nonprofit, other first responders, people that cut their grass well. But I got to hear someone else's story about how your care impacted them.
Wow.
And so it's really encouraging that no matter where you are, if you're, at a activity with your kids, that's the story that I got to hear, right? And get to engage with another parent in that moment. Your level of care for that other human being is at the same level with a complete stranger.
Yeah.
And that stood out to me so much when I got to hear from the other person the impact that had on them in the way that you were so intentional about the conversation with them and about really being interested in them.
Yeah.
And then not only in that moment showing that they were important, caring for them, but then looking for ways that you could help them move towards the goals that they had. So I want you to know that it's really impressed me in a very positive way. The genuine care that you have for other people, but also, like I said, I love hearing your stories of what you do in regards to just you're very driven and so powerful what you were talking about to know that the results of your life come because of what you do when no one else is watching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I think a lot of us know that, or we've heard it maybe, right?
Yeah.
But it's one thing to know something, and it's another thing to live by it.
Yeah.
And to have that consistency of, this is where I know that God is leading me. And so I'm going to do this hour's worth of work today, knowing that that's going to move me closer towards the destination. And I think that requires not just the discipline, but also it requires trust. Yeah. Because you don't get to see none of us do. And I witnessed this. People get so discouraged because they think, well, I've been doing this for 3 months and I don't see any change yet.
Right. Yeah.
So what would you say to a person who's in that place of, okay, I thought that this is what I needed to be doing, but I haven't seen any evidence that there's any progress being made. And how do we keep going in those moments?
Yeah, you just have to trust that you're doing the right thing. The Israelites wandered for 40 years in the desert. I can tell you I've prayed for a pillar of fire by night. I'm getting that right. The cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, just to have the perspective of, am I in the right place? Because the desert is lonely and the wilderness is lonely. But you have to just be there because that's where you're being forged. That's where the Lord is put you to form you to where He needs you. That loneliness is almost indescribable. And you have to just trust. And sometimes that's just the lesson. Trust. So when you don't see the results for 3 months or even 2 years or 5 years, you have to just keep trusting. And I take a lot of strength from the journey of the Israelites out of Egypt, crossing the Red Sea, spending 40 years in the desert, and then walking around the walls of Jericho, blowing the trumpets and following God's call. It's just keep going and keep trusting. And one day it will seem like it happened overnight.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And also, I think something that has been helpful for me, the stories that you mentioned do remind us of God's faithfulness. And so they encourage us. Our God is just as big today as He was then. And so I was encouraged with a book that I'm reading currently to take time to remember the celebrations of God's faithfulness in my own life. And that builds my faith as well, to look back and say, Oh, I remember that moment when I didn't know what to do, and then God brought this provision. Or I remember that moment when I was feeling this and I didn't know, there was so much uncertainty, and God took care of me. And, I remember this moment when there was this steady, consistent movement in a certain direction, and then all of a sudden there was a victory. And so being able to remember in our own lives and share those moments is also, I think, something that gives us that continual trust of, okay, God has done it before, and I know he's going to do it again. And if I continue to trust, then no matter how long it takes, like you mentioned, sometimes it takes years to get to that place. And it will be worth it. I think that there's been plenty of evidence and proof up to this point in my life that I'm now convinced that it's worth it to trust God. As hard as that seems at some moments in our life.
Oh, absolutely.
His plan is always better than ours is. Right?
Oh, you are correct. In my Bible, if you were to pull it open, I read with a pencil and a highlighter. And I'll actually put dates by certain things, certain things that impact me at the time. But I have 4 steps in how I guide my life. It starts at Proverbs 3, and trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean out on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. He will show you which path to take and make your path straight, right? That is step 0, is what I put.
Okay.
Because that's the basis for all of it. You can't go on to step 1 until you've completed step 0. It's the only way to live. It's the way we're called to live, even though it seems the most difficult sometimes.
Right.
So, I totally get it. So, I would just tell them, look back at God's faithfulness, keep pushing, and know that one day the results will show. But that day's just not today. Your job is just to be faithful. And I've had that conversation with myself a lot, especially through my getting better journey. Some things were that fast. And we talked about that a little bit, just with the EMDR. It was a very quick turnaround. Some other things, like losing 50 pounds, that doesn't happen very fast. It took me 3 months, which that's fast.
I was going to say, to lose 50 pounds in 3 months is pretty fast.
So, I mean...
but there are things that happen.
Long increments.
Yeah.
And I have an extreme personality in that sense. If I go in and gonna do something, I'm 100% in. You probably could tell that about my personality.
Right.
But I mean, it started. Grass was a big thing when I was, back in 2019, 2020. I had the best yard. It was better than the golf course that we lived on. I real mowed it twice a week, and it was phenomenal. It's just, I go through these phases in life, but also knowing yourself is a good thing, because you can figure out where your pitfalls and how to avoid them in that regard too. I could just as easily go down the wrong path and get very into it. I don't smoke, I don't gamble, I don't drink. For that reason alone, it's not productive for me, and I know myself and that part of that personality, and it's not going to get me to where I need to be in 30 years. So I don't. So it's knowing yourself and trusting the process is very important.
Right. It reminds me, as you're talking about God's giving you a vision of where you're going to be in 30 years. I had a chance today to listen to a video about creating a vision board for our life. And there's no way for us to know exactly all the details. But I do believe that God gives us direction in areas of our life to move us towards certain decisions. And one of the things that stood out to me as I was listening to the video was the guy was talking about how really who we're becoming is the core of all of the other aspects of the vision board. That's really the most important element.
Yep.
And so our character is being formed through all of these experiences that we have, making it possible for us to be more loving, to be more caring, to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic, and be driven and be ambitious and be intentional. And the other things that we have, the other strengths that we have as well. It's not a matter of, for a very significant part of my life, I knew I was very competitive. And I thought that I needed to get rid of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I had somehow gotten this concept in my head of, in order to be humble, it meant not being competitive.
Gotcha.
And so I kept trying to stifle it and I need to get rid of this, right? But I knew I was so competitive, and so I'd always struggle with, what do I do with this? And now I know that those both serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
That competitiveness drives me to do things with excellence, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And also, while I do that, I can be very compassionate and caring and help other people along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's great. I love competition, because you're right. Competition breeds excellence, right? In every aspect of what we do. And I mean, I know you do fitness. I like to run. I like to stay in shape. Obviously, we need that. We can transfer that into so many different areas. And it's a part of goal setting. It's a very tangible, achievable goal setting to accomplish something in a short term. I ran my first half marathon a couple weeks ago. I'm running my next one in April. And so it's just having that type of competition is so important. It drives you.
Well, congratulations on running your first half marathon.
I appreciate it.
That's exciting.
That was fun. Thank you.
And your next one is in April?
Yes, it's in Frisco. They're doing the Frisco 5K. I'm doing the half marathon that day.
Okay. So I'll be up there with you. I'll run a 5K. You'll be running
Good.
half. Great.
Good. Well, unless I can convince you to do the rest.
Well, actually, I would really love to.
Nice.
My body is not ready for that yet.
I hear you.
But, I'm glad to be back to running after 9 months that I couldn't.
Nice. Yeah.
So
that's good. Well, and I think too, as a parent, it shows our children something, right? And we've talked about this briefly, but our first priority is obviously faith, but then it's really to take care of our family, right? And the things that I have learned really need to be instilled into Mark and Grace, and shame on me if I don't, teach them and show them that you can do big things and hard things. And obviously we tell them that. We have our affirmations that we give to Grace before she goes to school. But, and part of it is, I could do hard things and I could do big things. But living that as a parent is our job. Right. To prove that to our children that you still can go do whatever you want. It's not, the American dream is still very much alive. It's what risk are you willing to take? It's, are you willing to get up and sacrifice to be fit, to run the 5K, to be competitive? It's dropping those little nuggets that one day will come back, that they'll go, hey, if Dad could do that, if my dad can lift a 150-pound tree and throw it 8 feet onto a tractor trailer, I think I can get up at 4:00 in the morning to build off that legacy. Like, that is a legacy in my book. I still have pictures of the trucks on my phone that Dad would load after working all night, 12-hour shift, get home, sleep 3 hours, wake up, load 250 trees onto a truck by hand because they leave the trailer, and you help. But I mean, it's an absolute stud, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was
definitely
that's what you have to show your children. In my mind, that's part of the process that they need to see, although life is different. We don't have a farm, and then, the kids aren't milking cows like we used to or whatever, but they can still learn. They can learn from those lessons. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
And as parents, we get to continue giving that example to our kids. Just like your dad is still showing you in his retirement.
Right.
But also, it's a really satisfying part of life to watch our kids then actually start to take steps towards those things themselves. And I'm sure your dad is extremely proud of
appreciate it. I think
you
he is,
and the man that you've become. And that your parents are.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this time together, is there anything that you haven't gotten to share yet that you would like to make sure that our listeners get to hear?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about our faith and trusting the Lord, about moving in the direction that you feel led. Don't say no, just go. That was our sermon this past week, so it's obviously front of mind, or top of my mind, but you're never stuck. You're never alone. God is leading you, and it oftentimes takes that first step of faith to get where you need to be. Show him that you trust him. Show him that you're willing to do what he has called you to do, and you'll have a satisfying life. You won't have an easy life, but you'll have a satisfying life because you're following a purpose and a call. So, yeah, that's what I would leave with everyone.
Yeah. I think it's really a valuable thing to end on is we're not looking for an easy life. No. If anybody is out here looking for an easy life, then that's not going to be possible. Yeah. We're going to either put effort into creating a life that is going to enhance, the world and make other people's lives better, or our life is going to be hard because we're not choosing
to live in obedience.
And I would much rather take the route where it's hard because of the effort that I'm putting forth to be able to serve others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lead by example. Leading by example is the best way to lead.
Yeah.
And allowing people to see it more than hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Aaron, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate this, and what you've taught me just through a conversation and being together. I really appreciate you.
Well, there's been several nuggets that I didn't bring my journal tonight, but when I get home, I'm going to write down several things that the conversation brought out for me that are takeaways for me personally. And I would encourage everybody that's listening to write down those things that stood out to you, the things that resonated, the things that, or maybe it's just one thing. Maybe there's one phrase or one specific takeaway that you can remember from this conversation, and that is something that is, a lot of times I think that we expect this glorious, glamorous, transformation to happen.
Right.
And often it's in little shifts in our mindset of, a new perspective,
Yep.
So, all right.
Well, thank you so much.